Sometimes the safest place in the city becomes the most dangerous, when the moment everyone believes nothing could possibly go wrong. A light rain had just passed through downtown Seoul, leaving every glass tower shimmering beneath thousands of golden reflections. Luxury sedans glided quietly toward the entrance of the Grand Meridian Hotel, where politicians, celebrities, and business leaders gathered beneath elegant crystal chandeliers visible through towering windows. Security officers stood at every entrance with disciplined precision while photographers waited patiently behind velvet ropes, hoping to capture the arrival of the evening's most influential guest. Nathan Carter stepped from the rear seat of a sleek black sedan with the calm confidence of a man who had spent years mastering every room before entering it. At 39 years old, the Korean Mafia Boss carried himself with quiet authority rather than unnecessary arrogance. His perfectly tailored charcoal suit rested beneath a dark wool overcoat, and every measured step reflected complete control. Around him, experienced bodyguards scanned rooftops, parked vehicles, passing pedestrians, and every reflection in nearby windows. Nothing escaped their attention. At least that was what they believed. Less than 30 feet from the hotel entrance, Maya Brooks quietly arranged fresh white lilies and pale roses inside small woven baskets beneath a modest flower stand. Blind since childhood, she never looked toward passing crowds, yet somehow she always seemed to know exactly when customers approached. Her fingers moved gently across each stem with practiced confidence, while the cool evening breeze carried the delicate fragrance of fresh flowers through the busy sidewalk. Office workers greeted her warmly as they passed. Elderly couples often stopped to chat. Children smiled whenever she handed them a single flower simply because they sounded happy. To almost everyone walking by, Maya was simply the kind blind flower girl who had become part of the neighborhood. Very few people ever wondered how she always recognized familiar voices before anyone spoke. Nathan placed one polished shoe onto the rain-darkened pavement and reached toward the open car door, preparing to continue toward the brightly illuminated entrance. Then Maya suddenly stopped tying the ribbon around a bouquet. Her gentle smile disappeared. She slowly lifted her head toward the street, listening with complete stillness. The city sounded wrong. Traffic lights continued changing. Engines idled. Rainwater dripped from decorative awnings. Conversations drifted across the sidewalk. Yet beneath those familiar sounds, another rhythm quietly disturbed the balance she knew better than anyone. Somewhere nearby, footsteps had stopped too carefully. The evening breeze carried the faint scent of industrial lubricant where only perfume and flowers should have lingered. More unsettling than either was the silence itself. Someone was trying far too hard not to be noticed. Before her mind could question what her instincts already understood, Maya left her flower stand and walked directly toward the waiting sedan. The nearest bodyguard instinctively stepped forward, but she gently placed one hand against the edge of the open door before anyone could stop her. Nathan turned toward the unexpected interruption, his composed expression revealing only mild curiosity. Maya's voice remained soft, respectful, and almost apologetic. "Please, wait exactly 10 seconds before you step away from your car." Several bodyguards exchanged confused glances. One moved closer, prepared to escort her away without causing a scene. Nathan studied the young woman standing calmly before him. She did not sound frightened. She did not sound desperate. She sounded absolutely certain. The rain had stopped completely, yet for reasons he could not explain, Nathan suddenly found himself unable to take the very next step. The bodyguards reacted instantly, stepping between Nathan Carter and the blind flower girl with a smooth coordination that came only from years of discipline. One reached carefully toward Maya's arm, intending to guide her away from the open car door without creating unnecessary attention. She offered no resistance. Her hand simply remained resting against the polished door for one quiet moment before she slowly withdrew it. Nathan raised one finger, silently stopping his security team before they touched her. His gaze never left her face. She stood peacefully beneath the hotel lights, holding a small basket of fresh lilies as though she had interrupted nothing more important than an ordinary evening conversation. Around them, photographers lowered their cameras, uncertain whether they were witnessing an awkward misunderstanding or something far more unusual. Guests continued entering the hotel lobby beneath glittering chandeliers, unaware that nearly everyone surrounding the black sedan had stopped moving. Nathan finally spoke. "Why 10 seconds?" His voice remained calm, neither suspicious nor welcoming. Maya lowered her head slightly before answering. "Because the street has been speaking to me all day, and right now it sounds different." Several bodyguards exchanged puzzled glances. One of them quietly shook his head, convinced the young woman was simply confused. Nathan, however, noticed something unusual. She never once asked for money. She never introduced herself. She never attempted to explain who he was or why she had approached him. She only listened. The city itself seemed to pause with her. Water continued dripping from decorative stone ledges after the passing rainstorm. A distant subway train created a faint vibration beneath the sidewalk before fading into silence. Somewhere nearby, a bicycle bell rang twice before disappearing behind the evening traffic. Maya remained completely still. Her expression grew more focused with every passing second. She tilted her head almost imperceptibly toward the opposite side of the boulevard. Nathan found himself checking his watch without realizing it. 3 seconds had passed. 4. 5. No one spoke. Even the hotel staff waiting beside the entrance sensed that interrupting the silence somehow felt inappropriate. Then, just as the 10th second arrived, a strong gust of wind rushed unexpectedly between the surrounding skyscrapers, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of fresh rain mixed with the aroma of flowering trees from a nearby park. Maya slowly exhaled. The tension in her shoulders disappeared almost immediately. "It is all right now," she whispered softly. Nathan frowned. What changed? Maya hesitated before answering. "The sound that did not belong here is gone." Before Nathan could ask another question, one of his senior security officers quietly received a message through his earpiece. His expression remained controlled, but his eyes briefly revealed surprise. He stepped closer to Nathan and lowered his voice. "Sir, one of our rooftop observation teams just reported unusual activity on a neighboring building. Whoever was there left only moments ago. They found signs that someone had been watching the hotel entrance, but the location is now empty." Nathan slowly turned back toward Maya. She had already returned to her flower stand and was gently adjusting a bouquet of white roses as though nothing remarkable had happened. She neither waited for gratitude nor looked back to see whether anyone believed her. The evening simply continued around her. Nathan stood silently beneath the glowing hotel lights, realizing that a woman who had never seen his face somehow noticed what an entire security team had failed to recognize, and for the first time in many years, certainty gave way to curiosity. Nathan Carter attended the charity gala that evening, but his thoughts never truly entered the ballroom. While distinguished guests applauded speeches and crystal glasses reflected warm golden light beneath towering chandeliers, his attention repeatedly drifted toward the flower stand outside the hotel entrance. The image refused to leave his mind. A blind young woman had calmly asked him to wait exactly 10 seconds, and moments later his security team discovered clear evidence that someone had recently occupied a nearby rooftop observation point before quietly disappearing. Nathan had built his reputation by trusting facts instead of coincidence, and facts demanded answers. The following morning, before the city reached its usual rush of traffic and impatient footsteps, he instructed his chief of security to begin a discreet investigation. "Do not treat her like a suspect," Nathan said calmly. "Find out who she is." By noon, the first report arrived. Maya Brooks, 27 years old. Blind since early childhood after a severe illness permanently damaged her eyesight. No criminal record. No unexplained financial activity. She rented a modest apartment above an elderly tailor's shop less than 2 miles from the hotel. Every weekday, she visited the same wholesale flower market before sunrise, carefully selecting fresh lilies, roses, peonies, and eucalyptus before opening her small flower stand on the same corner where she had worked for years. She had no influential friends, no hidden business connections, and no history, suggesting she possessed inside information about powerful people. The report described an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Yet the interviews revealed something extraordinary. Shop owners consistently repeated the same observations. Maya recognized regular customers before they spoke. She identified approaching delivery trucks by engine vibration alone. She often reminded distracted pedestrians that they had forgotten umbrellas moments before rain began, simply because she noticed subtle changes in wind direction and air pressure. One elderly cafe owner smiled while speaking with investigators. She does not see the neighborhood, he explained. She listens to it. She says every street has its own voice. Nathan quietly closed the report without saying a word. Late that afternoon, he chose not to send another investigator. Instead, he drove to the flower stand himself, leaving most of his security team a respectful distance away. Maya was arranging fresh white roses inside a woven basket when she smiled gently before he reached her table. "Good afternoon," she said warmly. "You came back." Nathan stopped, surprised that she recognized him immediately. "How did you know it was me?" Maya carefully adjusted a ribbon around a bouquet before answering. "Your footsteps never rush, even when everyone around you is walking faster. And today the breeze carried the same cedar scent I noticed yesterday." Nathan looked briefly toward his polished shoes before returning his attention to her. "Do you always recognize people that way?" Maya smiled softly. "Everyone leaves a different conversation behind them. Some people speak loudly. Some people wear strong perfume. Some people walk with heavy thoughts." She paused for a moment before adding, "You listen more than most people realize." Nathan found himself smiling almost without noticing. For years, countless people had judged him by reputation before ever speaking to him. Yet this young woman who had never seen his face seemed to understand something deeper than appearance. As he reached for a bouquet of white lilies, Maya suddenly became quiet once again. Her fingers stopped moving. Her gentle smile faded, replaced by careful concentration. Somewhere beyond the ordinary rhythm of the afternoon, she had heard something that did not belong. Maya remained perfectly still beside the flower stand, her fingertips resting lightly on the ribbon she had been tying only seconds earlier. The cheerful rhythm of the afternoon continued around her as office workers crossed the intersection. Bicycles rolled past outdoor cafes, and children laughed while chasing one another through the nearby square. Yet beneath those familiar sounds, another pattern quietly unsettled the harmony she trusted every single day. Nathan noticed the change immediately. Her breathing slowed. Her head turned slightly toward the opposite side of the street, not searching with her eyes, but listening with extraordinary patience. "What is it?" he asked softly. Maya hesitated, unwilling to speak before she understood exactly what troubled her. "Someone is trying very hard to sound ordinary," she finally answered. Nathan glanced across the boulevard. He saw pedestrians, delivery drivers, tourists taking photographs, and maintenance workers replacing decorative flowers outside a nearby office building. Everything appeared completely normal. His security team followed his gaze and quietly confirmed that nothing unusual could be seen. One bodyguard leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, the area is clear." Nathan nodded, but his attention returned to Maya instead of the surrounding streets. During their brief conversations, he had learned something important. She never exaggerated. She never guessed. Whenever uncertainty remained, she admitted it openly. Today her voice carried quiet confidence mixed with careful concern. "What do you hear?" Nathan asked. Maya listened for another few moments before answering. "Not what I hear. What I do not hear." Nathan frowned slightly. Maya continued speaking in the same calm tone. "Every afternoon, the workers changing flowers outside that building laugh with each other. Someone always drops a gardening tool. Someone always apologizes. Today there are footsteps, but no conversation. The silence feels practiced." Nathan slowly looked toward the building once again. From this distance, nothing appeared suspicious. Several people wearing maintenance uniforms carefully moved flower boxes near the entrance exactly as they should. Yet once Maya mentioned the missing conversation, Nathan realized something surprising. He could not remember hearing a single voice from that group either. It was an absence so subtle that most people would never notice it. Nathan quietly turned toward his chief of security. Change the route. The officer looked surprised. Sir, we will enter through the east courtyard instead. Although the adjustment added only a few minutes to their schedule, several members of the security team exchanged confused expressions. Nathan rarely altered carefully planned movements without a clear operational reason. Nevertheless, no one questioned the instruction. They calmly redirected the vehicles while maintaining the same professional discipline. Maya relaxed almost immediately. The tension disappeared from her shoulders as naturally as it had arrived. She smiled faintly and returned to arranging fresh flowers with gentle hands. Thank you, Nathan said before leaving. Maya tilted her head toward his voice. For what? For reminding me that paying attention is not the same as truly listening. She smiled but offered no reply. Nearly 20 minutes later, Nathan's security chief received an update from officers who had quietly inspected the original entrance after the schedule changed. They reported that the maintenance crew assigned to decorate the building had unexpectedly failed to appear for work that afternoon, and no supervisor could identify the unfamiliar individuals who had briefly occupied the area before leaving without explanation. Nathan folded the report and looked through the tinted window of his moving car. For the second time in less than 2 days, Maya had noticed something invisible to everyone else. He no longer believed coincidence could explain what had happened, and for the first time since building the life he controlled so carefully, he wondered whether the safest decision he could make was to trust the instincts of a woman who experienced the world in a way no one else ever could. Nathan Carter spent the next several days changing something he had not altered in years. Instead of allowing detailed intelligence reports to shape every decision, he began making room for one quiet question before leaving any building or entering any meeting. What would Maya notice that everyone else overlooked? He never admitted that thought aloud, not even to himself, but it slowly became part of his routine. One crisp autumn morning, long before the sidewalks filled with commuters, his driver stopped beside the familiar flower stand. The air carried the fragrance of fresh eucalyptus, damp cedar crates, and newly delivered roses. Maya was already arranging bouquets with practiced hands, carefully separating each flower by texture instead of color. She smiled before the sedan door opened. "Good morning," she said warmly. "You arrived earlier today." Nathan stepped onto the sidewalk and laughed softly. "Am I becoming predictable?" Maya tilted her head, listening to the gentle echo of his footsteps against the surrounding buildings. "Not predictable. Comfortable." Nathan paused, surprised by the answer. Comfort was not a word anyone had ever associated with him. He purchased a bouquet of white lilies, although there was no destination waiting for the flowers. He simply wanted a reason to remain there a little longer. As the city slowly awakened around them, delivery trucks rolled across nearby intersections, cafes unlocked their front doors, and the first subway train sent faint vibrations beneath the pavement. Maya carefully wrapped the bouquet before handing it toward him. "May I ask you something?" Nathan said. "Of course. How did you learn to hear what no one else notices?" Maya smiled thoughtfully before answering. "I did not learn all at once. When I was little, I wanted to hear what everyone else heard. After I lost my sight, I became frustrated because people kept describing things they could see, but no one described the sounds around them. One day my grandmother told me that every place has its own rhythm if I became patient enough to listen." Nathan remained silent as she continued. "At first I could only recognize familiar footsteps. Then I noticed different breathing patterns. Later I learned how buildings change the direction of echoes, how trees soften the wind, and how rain changes the sound of distant traffic. After many years, the neighborhood became like a song I knew by heart. Whenever one note changes, I notice." Nathan looked across the busy avenue. Thousands of people crossed the streets every hour, yet almost none of them paid attention to the invisible details Maya described so naturally. "Do you ever make mistakes?" he asked gently. Maya nodded without hesitation. "Sometimes. That is why I never speak until I am certain. Listening requires humility. If I assume I already know everything, I stop hearing the truth." Nathan quietly absorbed every word. Her gift was not magic. It was discipline, patience, and a lifetime of careful observation transformed into extraordinary awareness. At that moment, his chief of security approached with a respectful expression. "Sir, the schedule for this afternoon has been finalized." Nathan accepted the document, but did not open it immediately. Instead, he looked back toward Maya. "Would you mind if I stopped by again tomorrow?" Maya smiled with the same gentle kindness she offered every customer. Flowers grow a little differently every day. So do people. Nathan thanked her and returned toward his waiting vehicle, carrying the bouquet with unexpected care. As the sedan disappeared into the flow of morning traffic, Maya remained quietly beside her flower stand. Then, almost without warning, the breeze shifted. Her smile slowly faded. The familiar rhythm of the street had changed once again, and this time the difference felt closer than ever before. The moment the morning breeze shifted, Maya Brooks stopped arranging flowers and quietly folded her hands around the ribbon she had been holding. The sounds of the neighborhood remained familiar on the surface. Delivery vans continued stopping outside nearby cafes. Office workers crossed the intersection while speaking into mobile phones. A street musician tuned an old guitar beneath a row of maple trees. Everything appeared ordinary, yet the invisible rhythm beneath those sounds had changed once again. This time the difference did not come from silence alone. It came from repetition. Maya listened carefully as several sets of footsteps passed along the sidewalk. 3 different people walked with almost identical timing. Their pace never naturally slowed to avoid pedestrians. Their shoes struck the pavement with unusual consistency, as though each step had been practiced countless times. She quietly lowered her head, allowing every surrounding sound to settle into place before separating each one in her mind. Nathan Carter's sedan had already disappeared into traffic, but something inside her urged her not to dismiss what she had just noticed. Nearly an hour later, Nathan arrived at his private office overlooking the Han River. His senior advisors gathered around a polished conference table covered with financial reports, architectural plans, and schedules for upcoming charitable events. Nathan listened attentively, yet part of his attention remained fixed on the conversation he had shared with Maya that morning. Her explanation continued echoing through his thoughts. "Every place has its own rhythm. Whenever one note changes, I notice." Before the meeting concluded, his chief of security quietly approached with an updated report. "Sir, we reviewed surveillance footage from the neighborhood surrounding the flower stand over the past week." Nathan looked up immediately. "Did you find anything?" "Only something unusual. The same 3 individuals have appeared near the intersection several times, but never together. Different clothing every day, different directions. However, after examining their walking patterns frame by frame, our analysts believe they are the same people." Nathan slowly leaned back in his chair. Maya had recognized the pattern simply by listening. The security team required advanced software and several days of review to reach the same conclusion. Nathan closed the report without another word. That afternoon, he canceled 2 appointments and instructed his driver to return to the flower stand. When he stepped from the vehicle, Maya smiled softly before he spoke. "You came back sooner than I expected," she said. Nathan looked at her with quiet admiration. "You were right again." Maya gently shook her head. "I was only careful." Nathan stood beside the flower stand instead of remaining surrounded by his security detail. Curious pedestrians walked past without recognizing who he was. For the first time in many years, he experienced several peaceful minutes without discussing business, strategy, or responsibility. Maya carefully handed a child a single daisy before turning back toward Nathan. "Sometimes people believe they are hiding because they change how they look," she said. "But very few people remember to change how they move." Nathan smiled thoughtfully. "You notice things that machines struggle to measure." Maya laughed softly. "People are not machines. They always leave small pieces of themselves behind." At that exact moment, a gentle gust carried the scent of fresh coffee, autumn leaves, and distant rain through the intersection. Maya's smile slowly disappeared. Her head turned slightly toward the opposite side of the street. After several silent seconds, she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Nathan, today they are not watching you from far away anymore. Someone has learned your new routine." Nathan Carter did not interrupt Maya or ask her to explain immediately. During the short time he had known her, he had learned that every warning she offered came only after careful observation, never from fear or imagination. He quietly turned toward his chief of security, who stood several feet away pretending to study the passing traffic while remaining alert to every conversation. "We are leaving," Nathan said calmly, "but not the way we planned." The officer nodded without hesitation. Unlike their first meeting outside the hotel, no one questioned the decision anymore. Within moments, the security team adjusted their positions with quiet efficiency, directing the vehicles toward a different street while maintaining an appearance of complete normality. Maya listened as the familiar footsteps gradually disappeared into the distance. Only after the last vehicle turned the corner did she slowly release the breath she had been holding. The neighborhood settled back into its ordinary rhythm. Office workers continued entering cafes. Children laughed outside a nearby bookstore. A florist across the street greeted longtime customers. Yet Maya knew something important had changed. Whoever had been quietly studying Nathan's routine would now discover that his movements could no longer be predicted. Later that afternoon, Nathan invited his senior security team into a private conference room overlooking the river. Large digital maps displayed his usual weekly schedule, marked with familiar routes, meeting locations, and arrival times. Nathan stood silently before the screens before speaking. "Erase every routine." The room became unusually quiet. One senior advisor looked surprised. "Sir, we have followed these procedures for years." Nathan nodded. "That is exactly why they have become visible." Another officer carefully asked, "May I ask what changed your mind?" Nathan smiled faintly. "Someone reminded me that habits speak louder than words." Over the following days, every predictable pattern disappeared. Meeting locations rotated without advance notice. Departure times shifted by small but meaningful intervals. Vehicles changed order. Walking routes varied from one block to another. Even coffee breaks moved to different times. None of the adjustments appeared dramatic by themselves, yet together they transformed Nathan's daily life into something impossible to anticipate. Several days later, his security analysts returned with another report. They had continued reviewing surveillance footage throughout the district. The same unidentified individuals who had repeatedly appeared near Nathan's routine had gradually stopped returning altogether. Without consistent patterns to observe, their presence quietly faded from every location the team monitored. Nathan closed the report and looked toward the city's skyline outside his office window. For the first time in weeks, nothing unusual appeared in the latest updates. That evening, he visited Maya once again, this time carrying no schedule and no urgent destination. He simply walked toward the flower stand as the sun painted warm shades of gold across the buildings surrounding the square. Maya smiled before he spoke. "The street feels lighter today," she said softly. Nathan looked around at the ordinary crowd enjoying the peaceful evening. "How can you tell?" Maya gently brushed her fingertips across a bouquet of fresh white lilies before answering. "People are no longer trying so hard to become invisible. The neighborhood sounds like itself again." Nathan remained silent for several moments, appreciating how naturally she described something most people would never consider noticing. He reached into his pocket, paid for another bouquet, and accepted it with genuine gratitude. "You protected me," he said quietly. Maya smiled with gentle humility and shook her head.
"No."
"I only listened. You were the one willing to change." Nathan lowered his eyes for a brief moment before looking back at her. He realized that power had taught him how to control people, resources, and circumstances, but it had taken one patient flower seller to teach him the difference between watching the world and truly paying attention to it. Just as they prepared to say goodbye, Maya tilted her head slightly toward the evening breeze, and a thoughtful smile slowly returned to her face. "I think," she whispered, "the city finally sounds peaceful again." The peaceful rhythm Maya described did not disappear overnight, but neither did Nathan Carter allow himself to believe that calm meant every uncertainty had vanished forever. Instead, he embraced a lesson that quietly reshaped the way he lived. Every morning began differently. Every destination changed without announcement. Every familiar habit was replaced by thoughtful flexibility. What once seemed inconvenient gradually became second nature, and the people responsible for protecting him noticed something remarkable. Their work became less reactive and more observant. They listened before acting. They questioned routines instead of defending them. Weeks passed, and the neighborhood surrounding Maya's flower stand slowly returned to its gentle routine. Office workers once again paused to buy flowers before work. Elderly couples shared conversations beneath the maple trees. Children laughed whenever Maya placed a single daisy into their hands without asking for anything in return. The intersection felt lighter, not because the city itself had changed, but because the tension that had quietly settled there had finally disappeared. Nathan continued visiting whenever his schedule allowed, although no one except his closest security officers understood why those brief stops had become so important. He no longer arrived carrying only business responsibilities. Sometimes he brought books recorded in audio format after learning Maya enjoyed listening to classic literature while arranging flowers. Other times, he simply stood beside the flower stand for a few peaceful minutes, enjoying conversations that required neither strategy nor negotiation. One cool afternoon, while golden autumn leaves drifted gently across the sidewalk, Nathan noticed something different about Maya. She seemed happier than before, laughing easily with familiar customers while teaching a young child how to recognize flowers by their fragrance instead of their appearance. The little girl closed her eyes, smiled after smelling a white lily, and guessed correctly. Maya applauded softly, and the child laughed with unmistakable pride. Nathan watched quietly from a respectful distance, realizing that Maya had been sharing her extraordinary way of experiencing the world long before he entered her life. She had never considered it extraordinary herself. When the crowd became smaller, Nathan approached with his usual bouquet purchase. "Business seems busy today," he said. Maya smiled warmly. "People stay longer now. They are not rushing quite as much." Nathan looked around the square. She was right. Conversations lingered. Neighbors greeted one another by name. Even strangers appeared more willing to slow down. "You changed this place," Nathan said thoughtfully. Maya gently shook her head. "No." People changed when someone finally slowed down enough to notice them. Her answer remained with Nathan long after he returned to his office. That evening, he quietly instructed one of his advisors to prepare an unusual proposal. He requested no publicity, no press conference, and no announcement connecting his name to the project. He simply asked for a careful renovation of the aging flower market where Maya had worked for years. The wooden stalls would be repaired. New lighting would brighten the walkways. Accessible paths would allow elderly visitors and people with disabilities to move comfortably through the market. Small local flower sellers would receive improved storage without increased rent. Nathan reviewed every detail personally before approving the plans. As he signed the final document, his advisor looked at him with quiet curiosity. "Would you like your name displayed as the sponsor?" Nathan smiled gently and placed the pen on the polished desk. "No. The people who belong there have already given that place its identity. They do not need mine." Outside his office window, the evening lights slowly illuminated the city, and somewhere across those streets, Maya continued arranging flowers beneath the peaceful rhythm she had helped restore without ever asking for recognition. Several months later, the first morning of spring arrived with gentle sunshine spilling across the renovated flower market. Fresh blossoms filled every corner with delicate fragrance, polished wooden stalls welcomed customers from every neighborhood, and newly planted trees cast soft shadows across wide stone walkways designed for everyone to enjoy. Elderly visitors walked comfortably beside young families, children laughed while choosing colorful bouquets, and local flower sellers greeted one another with renewed optimism. No grand ceremony had announced the transformation. No famous name appeared on banners or advertisements. The market simply reopened as though it had always deserved to look this beautiful. "Maya." Brooke slowly walked toward her familiar flower stand, guided by the comforting sounds she had known for years. She paused for a moment before placing her hands upon the smooth wooden counter. The grain felt new beneath her fingertips. The pathways echoed differently, wider and more open than before. Fresh fountains created a gentle rhythm nearby, while birds settled comfortably among newly planted flowering trees. She smiled without asking a single question because she already understood that someone had quietly cared enough to preserve the place she loved instead of replacing it. One of the neighboring flower sellers approached with excitement. Maya, everything has been rebuilt. The lighting is brighter. The storage rooms stay cool even during summer. They even made every path easier for wheelchairs and walking canes. Maya gently touched the edge of the counter once more before whispering, "It sounds beautiful." Throughout the morning, customers arrived one after another, many commenting on how peaceful the market now felt. They lingered longer than before, enjoying conversations instead of rushing through purchases. Musicians played gentle acoustic melodies near the entrance, cafes filled with cheerful conversations, and children carried tiny bouquets almost as proudly as priceless treasures. The neighborhood had not simply received a renovation. It had rediscovered its heartbeat. Shortly before noon, familiar footsteps approached through the lively crowd. Maya smiled immediately. "Good morning, Nathan." Nathan Carter stopped beside the flower stand, holding nothing except quiet gratitude. "Good morning, Maya." She laughed softly. "You are carrying flowers today." Nathan looked down, surprised. In his hand rested a single white lily he had picked up from another nearby vendor while walking through the market. "How did you know?" Maya smiled. Lilies have a different fragrance after they have been carried for several minutes. They become warmer. Nathan laughed gently, shaking his head with genuine admiration. "I suppose I should stop being surprised." Maya carefully accepted the flower before handing it back to him. "No," she said kindly. "Keep it. Today it belongs to you." Nathan looked around the market one final time. Above the entrance stood a simple wooden sign carved with quiet elegance. It read, "Flowers sold here with dignity." There was no sponsor's name beneath the words.
No recognition. No explanation.
Only a reminder that every person who entered deserved respect. Nathan turned toward Maya. "You once told me every place has its own rhythm." Maya nodded. "Yes." He smiled warmly. "This place sounds different now." Maya listened to the laughter, footsteps, birds, gentle wind, and peaceful conversations surrounding them. After a long moment, she answered with complete certainty.
No.
"It finally sounds like itself." Nathan quietly lowered his eyes, understanding that the greatest lesson of his life had not come from wealth, influence, or authority. It had come from a woman who had never seen his face yet taught him how to truly see the people around him. As the spring breeze carried the fragrance of fresh flowers through the market, the city moved forward with renewed hope, and without seeking recognition or reward, two lives forever remained connected by a simple act of listening, proving that sometimes the strongest protection comes not from power, but from compassion, patience, and the quiet courage to notice what everyone else has forgotten.